Hallo und guten Abend miteinander. Da das heute ein englischsprachiger Event ist, habe ich mir etwas aufgeschrieben. Welcome to the ALPS and thank you for joining us tonight. This evening we look toward the Arctic to Inuit communities shaped by forced relocations and to the fragile, if I say it right, North Water Polynya. I now hand over with pleasure to Daniel Buntasperne from Reportagen, who will lead the evening and introduce our guests. Wonderful that you are here. Thanks.
Good evening, everybody. I'm really looking forward to this happening because it's a region we never heard of. At least I didn't when Marzio first pitched me this story. He said, I want to go to Polynya. So I was, no, it can't be Poland, Polynya, what is this? I had to Google it, I spelled it wrong, I had no clue, and it ended up in a region where I have a globus at home, I've seen the world map, but I've never seen this. So it's going to be very interesting to get to know this area, which is not around the next corner. But I'm not going to talk tonight. My guests are, and I would like to introduce you to them. It's a project. It's not only a reporter goes somewhere and tells a story. It's more behind this. And we have two reporters. One is Nicola Scaevola. He's a freelance reporter from Italy. He lives in Milano. He used to work for Reuters from London and later for Condé Nast Media out of New York. And since some years, he's fixed in Milano and working as a reporter. We had already one story from him, from Mekong Delta in Reportagen some years ago, where he, together with Marzio, they traveled there and wrote a story about Cambodia. Next to Nicola is Marzio Mian. Marzio Mian is a staff writer from Reportagen since many years. He used to be editor-in-chief of Corriere della Sera, the magazine, and then at the age of 30 plus, he decided to become freelancer. It was maybe a little later. And to jump in this tough profession again, because he really wants to tell stories they are not told and he considers important. And Marzio was the one who pitched the story to me when he called me and says he wants to go to Polynya. Not only Polynya, I said, just to give you an idea, it's the Serengeti of the Arktis. And we as journalists, we love metaphors, and with Serengeti of the Arktis, that's a story. We sold it well. Next to Marzio is Pat Egan. Pat Egan, by the way, he flew from Toronto to Bern, and he's going back this weekend only for this event because he's so much engaged with the Arctic region that for him it's very important to be here. He used to work as a He told me he was a bee reporter in his beginnings. In Swiss Germans, that would be der Lokaljournalist, der den Krüngelzüchterverein abdecken muss. So that's how he started. He became a reporter eventually, and he became an editor and publisher of several newspapers, daily newspapers in North Michigan, America. After his career as a publisher, he created the Arctic Times Project, which is an organization of journalists with the goal to shed a light on this area where so much things are happening and where we should care a lot because what happens in the Arctic does not stay in the Arctic, what we will learn. So welcome, the three of you. Nice that you're here. So I had to really look a lot on this map to understand where we are. We are between Greenland and Canada, of course. And between Greenland and Canada, you see in the upper small map there, you can make you an idea where we are. From Kanak, it's about 800 kilometers to the North Pole. From the same village, it's about 1,500 kilometers to the capital of Grönland, Nuuk. And from Grise Fjord, the Canadian place, it's about 3,500 kilometers to Ottawa, the capital of Canada. So it's really far and remote. And how do we get there, Marzio? From Milano to Grise Fjord, where you have been?
Just 11 flights in 14 days.
11 flights.
If you add another 10 flights Nicola had to get, because he is the one who covered and research in Kanak. So this project, this reportage, has
the most unsustainable probably project.
exactly. So more or less 20 flights. Yeah. So because you have small planes and these planes that just make jumps, and so then there's not sure you can get to because you can be stuck in one of these places and waiting for the weather to change, and then you have, for example, to get to Grise Fjord, there is only one flight a week. If you miss that, you have to wait next week, and you can be stuck for 15 days, 20 days. I was lucky, actually.
And when you're stuck, it's going to be expensive because there's no hotel or Airbnb or stuff like that.
There is, for example, in Resolute Bay, that's the last stop before getting to Grise Fjord. There is only one camp. They call it camp because it's where all these workers and engineers, these guys who are exploiting the Arctic, more or less, and that's where they are based. And so this is the only bed you can have there, and it's very, very expensive because these companies are paying. So in my case, I couldn't afford to stay there more than one night, and so I spoke to the manager and said, I'm a freelancer, and if I can't stay here and I can't stay out in the snow, so he made me the same price he made for the Inuit. So yeah.
So we see in this map this North Water Polynya, area of water, of course, of ocean, and it's called Polynya because it's ice-free the most time of the year. But as you can also see, in the north there's ice, and in the south as well. So how is it possible? This surface, to give you an idea, has about 85,000 square kilometers, which is the size of Austria or twice the size of Switzerland, and it's an ice-free area. And I understand you're the technical guy, the biologist, who can explain us how does that work. And especially this ice-free area is producing ice for the ice in the north and the south. So give it a try.
It gets always more and more complicated because, there are several factors that makes it so that you consider the water there most of the year is solid frozen, so it stays, it's big chunk of ice. Whereas this sort of mirror, big patch of water, is liquid, and it stays liquid, and that's why we called it the Serengeti of the Arctic, because it becomes an oasis. It becomes basically the only place where the big mammals that are there, the walruses, the whales, the seals, who have to breathe, they spend a lot of time underwater, but at some point they have to come up and breathe. That's where they can breathe, the only place, because all the rest is frozen solid.
And then it's rich.
And it's also very rich with nutrients that starts a whole chain of events, and so it becomes rich in plankton, and then so birds and fish, so they can feed, and it becomes also full of.
And you can see it from the
polar bears. And the reason why all this happens, and has been happening for many years, many centuries, and now one of the reasons why we went there is because it's changing, because of climate change, is that up north you can see there's the Nair Strait, and over there it freezes and it blocks, it becomes sort of an ice bridge that blocks the entrance to this patch of water for iceberg. So that increases, in the first place, increases the solarization, that the sun can shine and keep the water a little more free. Not only that, because of this ice bridge that forms, the wind gets channeled in a way that it's constantly blowing. And this, together with the currents that are forming and the fact that it's so cold, makes it so that the water on the surface freezes. And the minute it freezes, the wind blows away the crystals, and so this spreads the ice. But the fact that the currents that gets moved makes it so that it stays liquid. And there's also another factor that when it freezes, the water freezes, and so it sets all the salt that are normally in the water starts dropping, because the moment the water freezes, it ejects all the salt. And this helps create what this Polynya is a sort of a technical term that scientists came up with, and it's not the only one that exists in around the Earth. There are other Polynya. This is just the biggest and the most sort of biologically productive. But it's this sort of freezing, constant freezing of water that makes it so that the water on the surface drops the salt, and so it creates a sort of a movement, upwelling movement. And that's why it's called Polynya scientifically, but the technical, the more sort of local way of calling it is Pikkealasorkja, which is in Inuit language. And there's also this is from Inuit from Greenland, Inuit from Canada, they call it Sarvajuak. And what it means, roughly translated, is like great upwelling, great source, because this movement of water makes it so that it becomes a sort of a piston, a pump that keeps moving water and feeds all the currents, the big currents of the oceans. There's a big, imagine a conveyor belt that moves water around and makes it so that circulation, feeds circulation, that is called amok, and it serves different current, including...
It's a pump, like a pump.
Yeah, including the Gulf Stream, for example, which is why, as Daniel said before, is one of the reasons why they say what happens in the Arctic doesn't stay in the Arctic, because if this pump gets somehow clogged and doesn't work that way, then it would mean that also, for example, for us, the Gulf Stream that makes it
weaker.
so that is productive, like the north of Europe can stay, the temperature it has, would get affected. And so I know it's not entirely easy to understand, and it's rather counterintuitive, but it's two things. It's a pump that stays free of water and allows a lot of animals and current to be fed and exist.
Wonderful. Now I think I got it somehow.
Okay.
Finally. And what you mentioned, it produces plankton. Plankton is the nurture for all these animals there. And since it's such a big surface, the plankton can be seen from space. So from space you can see...
Apparently when it blooms, it's one of the things that you can see from space. Yeah.
Pat, what is so interesting about this region that you helped to finance or to make possible your journalistic network, the Arctic Times Project, your ambition to send journalists in this area? Why? I mean, we all know that there are some Inuits, they're living their life like they lived years ago. What is so special?
I want to talk just for a second about the project, the Arctic Times Project is a small group, it's 5 or 6 of us who are journalists, mostly with print background, meaning we came out of newspapers and magazines and things. And 3 of the journalists, including Marzio, became friends at a what would you call it? The
Fellowship.
Yeah,
Fellowship.
Yeah, the fellowship in Michigan, sorry. And so they wanted to do Arctic work, and I was able to help them. And we've done a number of stories, and there's a site called arctictimes.org where you can see kind of the work that we've been doing. The Polynya became interesting because the Inuit have a concern about their own food security and food insecurity. And this is a really important area for a number of reasons. The food that they harvest there not only sustains their culture and their lives, the food also helps sustain other Inuit in other places, though there is not a big commercial fishery. We discovered that in 2017, the people on the Greenlandic side and the people on the Canadian side got together through a group called the Inuit Circumpolar Conference, the ICC, and put together a management agreement, if you want to call it that. It was an agreement where they would self-drive the existence and manage the existence of the Polynya. It was blessed by Greenland. It was blessed by Canada. It was not blessed by Denmark as of yet. So what force it has in terms of control over that area will depend upon what happens as Nicola explained, that ice bridge gets weaker and weaker, and perhaps we start getting factory ships moving in because the Inuit have no Coast Guard. They don't have big ships. They don't have protection. So enforcement of this management project is yet to be determined. What we wanted to do, and what we hope others will do, is we wanted to manage this story, do this story, create this story, and in May we will be going back and doing a full force. All the journalists will be there, and I'll explain in a little while how we do it. We will be going back and we will be creating this story, and we feel that we are helping them enforce their management understanding. We are helping them with their food security, because the more of the world knows about the threats to this area and the beauty of the area, and while we are not advocating for them, and while we are still journalists just trying to tell a story, what's going to end up happening is that we will help enforce and work with them on this food security. So you asked me what's important. That's kind of what's important, we think, in this story.
So to me, it seems like a David against Goliath thing when I look at this region. How many people live in Grise Fjord?
130 people, 140. Yeah.
And in Kanak?
About 500.
500. So we have less than 1,000 people. They share this Polynya. That's their food generator source.
This oasis, the oasis.
The oasis.
In the White Desert.
So what geopolitical elements, Marzio, are playing in this area?
Yeah, Pat was mentioning that this idea of managing together the communities in this area was in 2017. It's an era ago. We are living in another world now. It's a world now without law, without international law. This is the world of the strongest. And this is the place where the strongest are playing their game. And so, as Nicola explained how physically this area is important for the world, for us, for the weather in Europe and so on, for also stocks of fish, all that. But is where the problems are gathering there, because for example, there wasn't a border between the two shores, and now there is a border. These people used to commute fly. Even there was a flight every week between the two villages, and there isn't anymore. And so the people they had relatives. They fall in love with the other community. They married and so on. This doesn't happen anymore. They were sharing knowledge and hunting and fishing, and this doesn't happen. So yeah, this project, this idea, this dream that I think is kind of stuck now because of the geopolitical situation, because we know that the United States, Washington, the Trump administration has plans to occupy, dominate Greenland, but not only Greenland, to dominate the North American Arctic. In the North American Arctic, there is Canada as well. 40% of Canada is Arctic and is poorly habitated. Very, very few people live there. And so Canada, because of what happened in the last years, of course, the American ambitions on Greenland, but also the war in Ukraine, that changed the whole game, because there is an Arctic before the war in Ukraine and Arctic after that. Because before it was still a region of cooperation between also the United States and Russia and so on. So there was still a place of peace, of competition. There was a polar rush, as it's called, to get all the minerals, the riches that are there. More or less 30% of the minerals undiscovered in the planet are there still. And so, and after the war, this is a place where a possible war can take place between NATO and Russia, but not only that. So militarization, and still this is a world without international law anymore. There is a world of the law of the strongest, and the strongest there in the Arctic are three: United States, Russia, and China. And if you see the map from the top, you can see how everything is connected there. Of course, China is not an Arctic state, but the Arctic is in the top of the Chinese agenda because of the routes, the new routes, and because of the riches, and for example, Canada, in order to exploit the resources there, they are talking with China now for some mining and so on. And of course, this is conflicting with American policy. And then there is another problem there, because in the Arctic you have two passages. One is the Northeast Passage, and that goes off the Russian coast, and Russia owns 52% of the Arctic. 24,000 kilometers of the Arctic coast is Russian. And this is where this route is passing through. And that is where China is investing a lot, because that's a kind of shortcut the globalization for the commercial traffic. But there is the Northwest Passage that is just passing there, south of the Grisfjord, more or less. Yeah, connecting the North Atlantic with the North Pacific. So there is a huge interest for the United States to avoid Panama and use the Northwest Passage. The Northwest Passage is for Canada is a national passage, and for the United States it's an international passage. So it's a quite tough dispute there, and then the militarization, of course. Canada is exercising their the sovereignty, investing all the resources for the defense in the Arctic, and you have in just a bit south of there, Pituffik, it's the American base, and with 10,000 soldiers. But Canada is improving the militarization in the really high north of the Ellesmere Island, where there is a weather station and some radar station, but now they are building bases. And also in the area of Grisfjord, they are building bases. But this is an area, these two talking about geopolitics and how politics are how geography and history there are linked. Just think that these two villages are both born after the Cold War, after 1953. So there is a story. I think we should talk about this, but
we come later to the relocation. Pat.
I just want to amplify something that just sort of happened. Marzio gave a pretty good picture of a lot of things that you probably had not heard of, and maybe you'd heard of a number of them. There are many things that are coming and happening in the Arctic. We spent 2 years looking at the Russian passage and had really a lot of difficulty trying to get news out of there. There are no bureaus. There are no news bureaus in the Arctic, or if there are, there are few. There's one in Norway, there's some in Alaska. So no one is really representing news coming out of there. Periodically, large media will send reporters that way, and you will get a story. Once in a while, the New Yorker magazine this week has a large story about a Greenlandic hunter. So one of the things that we need to do, and one of the things that I would encourage you, if as you learn more about the Arctic, is to think about how we can get information out of the Arctic, how we can do more communication, and how we can represent kind of the news that's coming out of there. And that's one of the things that the Arctic Times Project wants to do. It wants to excite more interest and we hope, as a project, that we will start incorporating younger journalists into this world, into this project, and bringing them up to places like Grisfjord and Canuck in the future.
But reportages was our best ally, of course, because I'm writing stories from the Arctic for reportages since 7-8 years, I think, and of a combination of course, support from Arctic Times Project and reportage, but we wrote about Russia, where nobody reported from Russia, from the West. So we were the only one going there to Chukotka, to Murmansk, to Yakutia, and so on. And then, of course, the story in Greenland, and from
Pevek, the nuclear-driven icebreaker.
Of course. Pevek and Chukotka is just in front of the Bering Strait, the northeast, the northernmost place in Russia, and and we were also arrested there, me and the photographer. So it's hard to be there because the Russian Arctic is guarded by the FSB, by the secret services, not the normal border guards. So because it's a very sensitive border frontier. Just think that this frontier, 24,000 kilometers, was naturally protected from the ice. So even during the Cold War, that was naturally protected. But now it's not so. So the Russian are militarizing that area because it's weak now and is vulnerable, let's say, because the ice is not protecting that area anymore, and is where Russia has the oil, gas, and all the rare earths and all those minerals that are needed for the green economy, and so is what I call the Putin's ATM machine, is where he gets the money for his plans. So to be there is really, really dangerous, and is where the most dangerous things are happening from a military point of view, from what we wrote on the reportage on this floating nuclear power plant, and that is just in the front of a school with 500 kids there. They have just this huge barge, more or less, that for Greenpeace calls this thing the Chernobyl of the ice, because there is nobody can nobody knows what could happen, because the conditions in the Arctic are changed. There is wind, there are waves, huge waves that is something new. So you can't plan something like this in the Arctic anymore. Tsunamis that's an area for tsunamis. Just so it's really Russian roulette.
So thank you for this bigger picture and this context of this area. But let's get away from the geopolitics down to earth to our oasis. And I would like to share some pictures with you. As you know, Nicola, he was in Kanak for this story, so he did the research about the Inuits on the Greenland side, and Marzio, he was in Grise Fjord with his 11 flights from Milano.
Just with a photographer.
Yes, he was with a photographer, so he has more pictures, but it's a slideshow, so I let it go, and I stop somewhere, and then you can talk about what we see. No, it doesn't work. I told you.
Yeah, it's just
okay, patience.
So here we are in that's the view basically from Kanak. And we were there when the ice was just starting. As you can see, oh no, the map is gone, of course. But basically Kanak is on a huge fjord, facing the Polynya. So the fjord is frozen solid most of the year, and then they can go out to the Polynya that is still liquid. But when we got there, as you can see here, that the ice started to break, and this was May, and I met with the meteorologist, an expert in weather, that came expressly from Copenhagen to assess the conditions, because she said it's May and we're in a situation that should normally happen in July. So that's the rate. She said it's not normal. Even in the climate change trend, this year is not normal. So it won't. Don't take it as a sort of an incredible trend, but that's the way we're going. That's where we're pointing.
And this is Kanak, right?
This is Kanak, yeah.
Okay. So 500 people.
It's just a matter of this. He was flying a drone, so he could take some pictures from. And these are all built on, like they're sort of built on stilts, because it's permafrost, so you can't have foundations or anything. And there's no sewage. There's not even a, like their water. They have water tank to get water, and lots of dogs, less than what they used to be, because unfortunately, even for that, the part of the reason why we were there is just this narrow strait ice bridge is collapsing, is not forming as well as it should. So the whole Polynya is not working the way it used to, and is becoming very unpredictable, and that's affecting not only their tradition and their way of living, but their opportunity to get food, because the village itself is sustained by there's a boat that goes there, gets there twice a year, when the few months where the water is liquid everywhere. And other than that, it's just the food comes from what you can hunt. So if you can't hunt because you can't go out at sea, because the ice is not forming properly, so you can't really go with the sled, but it's still too sloshy to go out with a boat. So it becomes a problem, because they don't have food, and so the first thing they do, they're forced to kill their dogs, because dogs means that you need food to feed dogs, and they don't want to see the dogs starving, and so they prefer to kill them. And so that, despite the fact that it's still filled with dogs, and the main sort of soundtrack that you hear all the time is because these dogs are no pet. I mean, you can't get near them. They're wild. They're working dogs.
How old do these dogs get? You asked this question.
I asked this question: how old to a normal working dog? And the guy at first said, "What do you mean? How old does?" I said, "Yeah. How long does he live?" And he looked at me and said, look at me. It's like, okay, you're Western and right. And I can tell you that a dog works about 8-9 years. I said, and then? He said, and then no work. I can't sustain a dog. I can't feed a dog. Do you want to understand? You want to get the picture full, right? Okay, I have to kill the dog. But yeah, it was a sort of, I felt a bit stupid, but I mean, it was a legitimate question, but I felt out of place, because over there things are cruel, but they're real.
That's why suicide is part of the Inuit culture, even though it's a taboo, but because it's the same concept, let's say, attitude. Because if you can't work, if you are
A burden.
sei un peso nella comunità, così.
Burden.
Yeah, burden of the community. So yeah, the sick people or the old people, they just are helped to die. And the problem now is that this happens to very young people. And I want to say this, that when I was in Grisfjord, there was just the news coming from a village south where in a week 4 guys between 12 years old and 16 years old took their lives. So it's a big problem, and it's too long to talk about this and explain why this happens, but mainly because they can't face modernity. This is the thing.
What are we eating here?
Oh, this is a walrus. Yeah, that's a fin of a walrus, which is, this was given out to dogs, basically. It was for a dog feed, because, as I said, it's part of what they hunt is for them. There's a small part that gets frozen and sent down south. Especially like they go crazy for the skin narwhals. Do you know narwhals are those sort of huge, imagine a dolphins on steroids, like big, with a tusk, which I always took it for a tusk, so I thought, well, why a horn there? And no, it's actually a tooth that grows strangely from here, from the jaws. It goes through their skull. They don't have I never really understand where their brain is. Anyway, it goes out here. And they say it's where the myth of the unicorn comes from, because apparently the first Norse were the first settler back in the days, brought back these tusks. And they instead of saying that it was a tooth of a fish, a mammal, they said it was a unicorn where it come from. And the narwhals, the best part is considered their skin, and that's what mostly is brought down south, because they love it. And they actually were in Switzerland. I was amazed, because I was brought with them to witness hunting of a narwhal. And the first thing they do when they take their narwhal finally out of the water is they cut a bit of their skin with a bit of fat. They take out some aromat. And they eat it with aromat. Really? Yeah, that's they love it. And I was kind of surprised, because they obviously, it comes from here, I suppose. But that's considered a very, very like the precious part, and so that's they call it matak, and they normally send it down south because it's worth money. The rest goes for their own feeding, their family, and for the dogs.
Here we have 2 young adults after school year. Yeah. And what time is it?
It's 5 a.m, because when we were there, it was the end of May, so it was like 24 hours light. It just never stops. It's strange. The sun just goes around. It doesn't even go up and down. It's just.
And the Swiss military guys, when they are in the Alps, they always paint their skin black to protect from the sun. Is that the reason why?
Not really. It's the last day of school. And we were walking, not that I was prepared to wake up at 5 despite the light. I wanted to sleep a bit more, but we were woken up by this bands of we heard people screaming, and then we discovered it were bands of like boys and girls going around, because the tradition there is that the last day of schools, the school kids go around and bothering and trying to waking up their teacher, just to tell them, get out, it's our last day of school. And for some reason, they paint their faces with that sort of black, it looks like tar, really. So we bumped into 2 of them, and the photographer took a picture, because they were very nice.
Maybe this one, then we skip to Grisefjord. What animal is this?
Showing off his polar bear trousers. Because
polar bear trousers, yeah.
I mean, we were there.
You can't get them in Transa.
Unfortunately, because it's apparently they're very, very warm. Actually, they were. This guy was actually complaining because here, I mean, it looks like it's pretty warm. It's still -5 probably because it was always between -15 and 0 degrees, but it was May, and we were dressed when we were brought out hunting. We were dressed with like technical gears, and then the guy was technical gears too. But then he said, "Look, this stuff that from mammoth, I don't know the names, the name one, North Face, whatever, they're just good in like average temperature. When it gets really cold, the only thing that really works are these kind of trousers, and they wear gloves made out of seal skin and the polar bear. But he was complaining because they have quotas. They can't kill. It's a survival for their survival. They kill, but they still have to follow quotas. So the government in Nuuk decides and assign to different villages and settlements a number of mammals that they can kill. And they, for example, had, I believe, 9 polar bears that they can kill. But they were complaining because A, they couldn't get enough trousers for the whole village, and they said it were cold. And B, because the polar bear are getting, in that village at least, they were complaining because they were getting closer and closer to the village. And they're dangerous. They're very dangerous.
So hunting is the main thing to do there?
Yeah.
And you also were hunting with them?
We went with these dogs. We're 2 sleds with like about 20 dogs. A tent, this little boat, and we camped out here. Basically, we got to the edge. This is how they shoot at seals, because that's basically a little slate, and they have a white sort of screen where they behind which they hide the gun. They place the gun on this sled with a screen in front, and they move closer and closer to the seal, because the seal can't really recognize them until they get to a range where they can fire. But we were hunting for narwhals in this case, so we got to the edge of the ice after it broke. Basically, the narwhals tend to go inside the fjord, and trying to get some halibut, that are fish. And so then they go with this, because they're still hunting like in a traditional way. So they go with a long harpoon, and that is attached to a rope that gets to a buoy made out of seal skin. And so with a kayak, they get near the narwhal if they can. If they're lucky enough, and the narwhal, because it's way too fast, if the narwhal decides to go, but if they can intercept the narwhal, then they would fish and then shoot the harpoon with their hand. And so already you imagine you're floating with that kind of kayak with no life vest, nothing, of course. By the way, one of the 2 hunters, we were with 3 people, and the youngest was 15 years old. And I don't know if it's this one or the anyway. It was on one of these kayak, and he had to basically probably the narwhal was like 3-4 meters away, and he had to throw this harpoon while he was on this kayak that is probably this wide, floating in ice. That you probably have 3 minutes if you capsize and reverse. You probably have 3-4 minutes to.
This is interesting because if you remember the map, you have the 2 villages, and this civilization, let's say, shared the same traditions, the same way to hunt, but in the last 50 years, I would say, many things changed between the two ways to hunt, for example. That gives you the idea of how Greenland is more traditional, and in Greenland, like Kanak has more experience on the Polynya, on the ice. So they hunt with dogs, and they have quotas and so on. In Grisfjord, North America, of course, they don't use the dogs. They use dogs just for fun or for tourism or something like this, or just for fun, let's say. And they just use skidoos and boats with big engines, and so very, very different. And for example, from Grisfjord, in Grisfjord they don't fish, and on the sea they just fish on a lake in an island, the Devon Island, a bit south, and in May the whole village moves to this island to fish this Arctic char. And they go with they move on the ice with snowmobiles, and it takes 2 days more or less, and so since they are North American, they say we can't go with dogs because it takes a week, and so they have a different approach to time. And progress, of course.
But on both sides of the shore, in Canada and in Greenland, they are living from Polynya, they are hunting, they're taking their food out of the water, but in totally different ways. And before 9/11, they had some kind of exchange because they could go back and forth, change ideas, learn from each other. While after that, since flights are stopped and there's the border again, this is not happening. Is that correct?
Yeah, but it's not happening. But of course, there was 9/11 when this stopped. Mm-hmm. But now there are other reasons. Mm-hmm.
Yes,
other reasons to make that to have a kind of wall there.
Mm.
That's the 15-year-old boy. He was learning because. Mm-hmm. Another difference is, like on Marzio's side, what he said before about the tradition is that Canadian would like to preserve certain way of living, but they have to sort of, nowadays they have association promoting a certain way of living, teaching how to hunt. In Greenland, it's still a bit more organic in a way that, okay, that boy just learned from his father, and it's still transmitted in a way that it's like it used to be. Mm-hmm. You don't need somebody to tell you, okay, come and learn. And this is a meteorologist who came from
that's the one you were talking about.
From Copenhagen. Mm-hmm. Here they're bringing water to the house, because every time you run out of water, there's a big bulldozer that goes to there's a sort of a reservoir of I tell this and then I shut up. There's a reservoir of bits of iceberg. When the few months that the water is clear in front of it, there are iceberg right navigating in front of it. And so they take some of them and they put them on a side. And so then every time they need some water, there's a bulldozer getting a big chunks of ice, then putting them in imagine it's a house, because from the outside it looks like any other house painted in one of the color, but as a huge, instead of a roof, it opens, it's like a hatch, and this bulldozer puts all the ice inside, melts it, and then there's a truck that gets the water, and then the truck comes outside your house and it fills the tank. So that's how you take a 10,000 years old shower with the water that was came from a glacier that was 10,000 years old probably.
Wonderful. We are now going to the other side. As you remember the map, from Greenland to Canada, crossing Austria, the Austrian surface of Polynya, and these pictures are from Marzio.
So yeah, the previous picture you show, the young lady there, she's the niece of this Larry.
Maybe tell us quickly the story of Grisefjord, because it's very difficult to understand that we think these are indigenous people. They have there been for hundreds and thousands of years. It's not the case. They have been relocated there in the Cold War from the Canadian government in order to mark that this is Canada.
Yeah. There were Inuits there hundreds of years ago, just like there were Inuits on the Greenlandic side. But in the Greenlandic side, they stayed there is where they were based. But on the Canadian side, Ellesmere Island, they moved little by little. They moved south, more to the Quebec, North Quebec, Hudson Bay, and so this area, this northern part of the Canadian Arctic was not inhabited since centuries at that point, and so after World War II, when the Cold War started, the Canadian government decided to exercise the sovereignty there, because the two big powers there, United States and the Soviet Union, were dominating the Arctic at that point. There was not a real war there, but there was the area where the submarines were chasing one the other, like the cat and the mouse, no? and is when the United States brought up in Greenland, in Thule, just a bit south of Kanak, 10,000 soldiers, is where the American base started in 1952, and the base is still there. Is the most important base in the northern hemisphere. Just to give you an idea, from Thule is where they organized, they planned the capture of Saddam Hussein in Iraq. Everything was decided from there, and it's the big ear of the Arctic, is where they hear everything that happens in the other side in Russia. But so it's that those years, the Arctic was important, and so Canada decided to exercise the sovereignty, and so they relocate, kind of deportation, Inuit families living in north of Quebec, and they were still hunting, but they were hunting or fishing in the Hudson Bay, but they were not used to hunt and survive like the ancestors of centuries before. So they were relocated with, they were told that they were brought north where the life was better, was a kind of milk and honey land, full of prey, and even promising them if they didn't like the place, they could go back. So nothing of this was true, and so they were brought up from almost 3,000 kilometers from their homes. And actually the plan was to relocate them even north than them in the Ellesmere, in the Alexander Fjord, that's north. But the conditions were bad, and that was September 1953. And so these families, 8 big families, were just abandoned in this place here, this shore, and with summer clothes, more or less, from the clothes that they had in North Quebec. And it was not Sicily, but was not cold like here. And with tents and dogs. And they were just left there. And so in September, and just a month after this, the day disappeared, and the night came and they got crazy. They died because of they were starving. They were and of course they started eating the dogs, and then started eating wolves, and because they had no knowledge on hunting belugas or whales or whatever, and so they died because the winter came, and they were depressed, and many of them died because they committed suicide, and just a few miles east of this place, the rangers, the mountains, how you call it, the Canadian, no, the police, the mountain,
Royal Canadian Mounted
the Royal
Police.
Canadian Mounted, they had a post played, and it was forbidden to the Inuit staying just a few miles away to go there and have some help. So they could be arrested too. So these were the conditions. So they survived. Some of them survived. Then after 3 or 4 years, they moved where the mountain police was, and that was where Grisfjord was started. And but what is impressive, of course, this story is it's a tragedy, and is a story of colonization. It's just what happened, even worse than what happened to the Inuit in Greenland with the Danish colonization. That was cruel, very cruel. And just think that we in the last year we discovered what the Danish did to the young girls. Sterilizzazione, come si dice?
Oh yeah, they implanted some. Yeah, I don't know how you that thing that prevents you from getting pregnant.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know how you call it.
Spirale auf Deutsch.
Yeah, exactly. In order,
Without telling them, and so they
in
were,
order to save money for welfare, this was the goal.
This was the.
So many terrible things happened in the Arctic that we didn't know. But now there is a plan to have a new relocation. This is what I discovered there, and this is why being a journalist is still important, and because just being in the places, on the ground, you can realize what's reality. And the reality there is that there is this more than a rumor that I had many confirmations of this, that there is a plan to relocate the Inuit north, more in Ellesmere Island, northern than Grisfjord. It's not clear where. But I spoke to Larry. He's not in the pictures here, but he's one of the few survivors of that relocation. And you can go, but probably because there is also the stature there, probably. Because there is a stature in the hill with a mother and a child, this one. And this was built in 2015, I think, when the Prime Minister Trudeau said sorry for what happened in 1953. And so is that in that year they built in this stature, just to write on the rock what happened, and not just words, but is in the rock. And this mother and son and child is this Larry, that is one of the survivors, told me that is just what happened to him when he was a child. He was 3 years old or 4 years old when in 1953, and he was staying on the shore with his mother, watching south, where they came from, and and he's now the voice of these, and he told me, if they want to do it again, this time they have to talk with us, and we need to sign an agreement on this. And because he said, because after 70 years, we are still here defending the white people's sovereignty. And what happens that for the white people and the military and the engineers, all these people go up north, paid from the companies, so they don't have to pay the flights, very expensive flights. They don't have to buy the food, because just think that the food there is, you have a jar of pickles for $50, and you have a kilo of chicken for $60. So this food is not affordable for the Inuit. That's why they have to hunt and fish. And but they have to pay the flights. So it's really affordable for them to stay there after 70 years. And now they want to use them because they are the only people who can live in those conditions. And so they need the Inuit. But Larry said this time we won't accept this just with a promise. I'm pessimist. I'm very pessimist for what happens to the indigenous people in all the Arctic, because I think now this is a time where there are no prisoners. And so the indigenous people are weak. They can't deal with big companies and lawyers and states and secret services, and so there is no I think there is no future for them. Anyway, we have to work on their side and tell their stories and do what we do.
I'm sorry to interrupt just quickly, just to take a look at the clock, and yes. I would really enjoy, or I would think it would be good if there could be questions from the audience.
That was exactly
maybe.
what I was going to do.
Perfect. So I'm sorry that I came for this. And I have one thing just to say about the spiral case. The spiral case, the one with the spirals and in Greenland. just because you said about cutting healthcare, or what was the reason for the government, for the Danish government. And I think it's really important to say it was about reducing the people in Greenland. So it was a lot about racism and colonialism, and it's, yeah, I think it's important that we say that. And now maybe open for questions.
Yeah, I was going to say, what you just said sounds like the final words of such an evening. But of course, you might have questions, because there are so many issues. It's Greenland, it's Canada, it's geopolitics, it's hunting, it's the threat towards the Inuit. So who has a question to one of our three guests? Yeah, 1 second. First this lady, and then you're.
Yeah, Marzio, you talked about the suicide of these young children, 12 to 15 years old, because, as you said, they could not stand the modernism. What do you mean by modernism? I think here some young people, they don't stand the pressure of economy. They have to work overtime, which is not paid, and so on. So this, I would say, this is our modernism today here. What is the modernism in this region?
They have other kind of problems. And because this has to do on their let's say philosophy, or their way to see themselves in the environment, in the world. Just think that the Inuit, they don't use the first person, me, I. If you ask Inuit, what do you think, especially in Greenland? What do you think about what happened tonight? He is not used to have an opinion himself, because he thinks he's part of a community, an environment. And but anyway, just think the conditions where these people lived in Greenland, especially for 10,000 years, and they're the only ones who could live there. That place is their homeland, of course, but isolation, and so the only way to survive beside the hunting and so on, it was relations between them. The bad and the good way, and the good and the bad way, because being in the tent, and of course problems, other kind of problems. But with technology is the first reason why these young guys they don't want to be part of this world anymore, because they see through the cell phones, they see what's the world. They know they would not be part of this, and then the isolation is getting worse. They don't talk each other anymore. If you cross these villages, these small houses, and around, is silent. Nobody talks, because everybody is on Facebook. You saw the same thing in Kanak, and they are obsessed with Facebook. But is this there is an illusion, to be part of the world because you have a cell phone. Then you realize that it's just a cell phone, and then there is the peer competition there, and so l'emulazione, no? Come si dice? That's why you have several cases in the same week. For example, I was with Arctic Times. We were in south of Greenland years ago, telling a story of uranium mine. This village moving from a fisherman village to a mining village. And I went to the cemetery there one day, and I saw all side of this cemetery with fresh plastic flowers, and I saw the ages, and they were 17, 18. In the town was Narsak. I think there was 500 people, probably 800 people, and just in one spring, there were 10 people 10 young people committing suicide there, and was suicide, was not car accidents, of course.
Yeah.
And because there is emulation, yeah. So yeah, this is a kind of modernity.
Yeah. There is one more question here in front.
Thank you for such a beautiful presentation. Or for me, it was very interesting. Was very surprised. I am very interested in a question about abortion in that area, because I don't know, because you are not female, of course, you might not get to this point, but I've read somewhere that they have the idea, or their tradition is, before giving the name, they're allowed to make the child disappear, even the abortion, and everything is based on a mother decision, and how is the possibility, and as we have seen about the dogs too. So I don't know if it is the true story I have read. Of course, I'm very open and I'm supporting women abortion, of course. So I wanted to know if you have asked this question. You need a woman in your team.
It's like, even because it's, again, there's lots of barriers in that case. There's I guess it's a traditional, I'm talking about the Greenlandish part, at least. It's a traditional society, so there are roles, and so it's not so easy for a man, especially a journalist, to speak about and talk about certain issues. So this is...
That raises a really important point about perspectives and making sure that we have a broader perspective when we go in and ask questions and ask stories. So thank you. Yeah.
I feel that we should come to an end because of the time, and I suggest we were still going to be here. So if there are more questions to one of our guests, you're very welcome to get in conversation.
I want to add one thing.
Yes.
That we miss in this because we started with the Polynya, so kind of scientific side of the story, and but there is now something new there, because till some years ago, even when I was in Greenland, there was distance between the scientific community and the traditional knowledge. The Inuit were skeptical on scientific researches on climate change, of course. This is what we are talking about. And this is changing because in Grisfjord, for example, there are young people there working with the scientists, contributing and monitoring in many ways, from permafrost to the temperature of the ocean to the erosion, the sea, the shore, coast erosion, and so on. And they are proud to do this. And they told me that even the old people, they don't trust anymore the traditional knowledge because it's not working anymore. So they feel like there should be a alliance, a cooperation with the scientific society. But they respect and they work only with those scientists who go there and ask make questions to the old people, and so they have an approach, not a colonial approach. Let's say.
Well, but just to finish that up, there's what we call research fatigue, where there has been many scientists who come in, ask of them, use them, and then disappear. And then they're not told what it was that the scientists found, or they are not consulted in the conclusions that the scientists make. And so they feel that it's not a conversation.
But in this case, with the Polynya is also putting the scientists together because they know that if there is a strong scientific knowledge about the Polynya, this could have a political value in order to get
preserve it.
Preserve it. So, Pat, final word for you. You came all the way from. You had to change to Toronto because there were no flights because of Thanksgiving. You came all the way from overseas for this evening. You launched this Arctic Times project, which is a wonderful initiative to make journalism happening there. What can we do? How can we inform ourselves? What would be your message to us to engage or to whatever it is from your side?
Well, thank you for the invitation, and it has gotten a little long, so I'm not going to go very long on this. But I think we're all what I would call, in English, it's a long, big word, autodidacts. We teach ourselves, we learn ourselves. And so I would encourage you to be sensitive to what we've talked about this evening. And we are looking for, and you can reach out to us, any of us, through the website or in any way as we go forward. I want you to get excited about what needs to happen. I think that it's really important that news out of the Arctic be part of our regular diet, and that we understand what's happening there. So thank you.
By the way, by reportage and other media that sponsor and publish our stories.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you. So just real quickly, what happens is that we sit down with sources, and we will do this in May, and we each interview, the reporters interview the same person. We sit around the same table in the same kitchen, and then we go back and write individual stories, and we publish wherever it is we can publish. It's a different kind of format. It's a different kind of, we aren't competing journalists, we are collaborating journalists, and we get to still see and build our stories independently, but we do it together, and we use the same sources. So people like Reportagen then take these, have been so helpful in not only seeding us, but then taking the news and taking the stories that we have. It might be from Marzio. We have a writer in California, Michael O'Neill, who's a Pulitzer Prize winner. He's had stories in the Washington Post that we've done. A writer in England, Maurice Walsh. He's worked with The Guardian and the BBC. So that's the kind of thing that we need to promote and do more of. So thank you.
Thank you all for coming. So we met now this night less than 1,000 people, like 700-800 people in Grisefjord and Kanak against the world. And we can add now us. They have us on their side. Thank you very much for coming and for these interesting insights. Nicola, Marzio, and Pat.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you as well, Daniel, for coming, and everybody for being here tonight. I would like to mention 2 upcoming events that are gathering around this topic. On the 10th of December, there is in the Bern History Museum a discussion about what indigeneity means today, with a lot of very good questions, with 2 guests from Greenland and 1 guest from Chile. And 1.5 months later, on the 30th of January in 2026, we will meet here again in this room, and we will show the film Odyssea Borealis, which follows 4 athletes along Greenland's east coast. And after the screening, as important as the film, we will talk with 2 filmmakers about this concept of expeditions and why we are fascinated with this. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Marzio and Nicola wrote is in the actual issue of Reportage, which came to the newsstand today, and you can acquire it there for 15 instead of 22 francs. Just if you want to read what we were talking about tonight, that's it.
Have a nice evening. Bye.